This is a disruption unlike anything that we've ever seen before. And I think that the conventional financial strategy is going to be shattered in the coming future.
I think it's imperative that people keep up with this stuff. It's not going away. Find a way to use it, find a way to incorporate it in your life, find a way to help you earn income, find a way to save time so you can spend more time with your family. You have to learn this and keep up with it in some way if you want to survive in this world.
If the biggest money, if the most successful people are going all in on AI, if you're not using it and someone else is, they're going to have an enormous, almost immeasurable edge over you. Whatever happens, we can build resiliency by using this foundational asset. I think that IBC is resilient to all of these possibilities. All right. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Remnant Finance. We are going to be talking about something a little different this week, something that we should all be tuning into, and that is AI and how we need to be thinking about it, preparing for it, understanding the potential impacts it's going to have, and most importantly of all, how we can leverage it for our financial strategy and what we also need to expect to be changing in the years to come, because this is a disruption unlike anything that we've ever seen before. We're going to review, not reading it word for word, but we're going to talk through an article put out by Jordi Visser, who I've mentioned quite a few times in our newsletter and our content lately, because he's got a really, he's basically now singularly focused on AI and crypto and how that's going to impact Wall Street. So he has got some really good insights that I think is super valuable. And when I read this article, I sent it to Brian. I said, we got to cover this because this is something that we should all be thinking through. Now, Brian and I are not AI doomsday kind of people. We're not, scared of the technological takeover, but it is going to affect every facet of your life, whether you're ready for it or not. And it's something that we want to talk through, be ready for. And so, yeah, before we get into that, what's going on, Brian?
No, nothing, man. Just busy morning on closing that property we talked about in the last episode this morning. So rock and rolling. It's now part of the estate. But yeah,
Nice.
man, things are good.
Yeah, that's great. That's the power of dry powder here, and that ties in a little bit to what we're going to talk about. Not exactly, but it's a recurring theme when we're talking about financial strategy and financial preparedness is being ready to capitalize on opportunities. And we think there's going to be a lot of this coming. And so in the same way that Brian had that dry powder ready to go, and he was able to get in front of the line, have the capital, and get the offer approved, it's a situation we want to find ourselves in the future, and we can do that. What are your first thoughts reading that article by Jordi Visser, AI, and how it's different than any other disruptors in history?
Well, that's what I was going to say is that we've had the good fortune of the interesting fortune of living through two massive disruptors already in our lifetime, because the technological cycle or speed at which it's changing has been happening in our lifetime faster than ever in history. So with the internet revolution, there was quasi-internet prior to the 90s, but not in anybody's home. And I remember, you watch these old videos of guys that are still in the news, like laughing about email and saying this is just going to be a fad, and that was a massive disruptor. The second one that came along in our lifetime that I can analyze are these cell phones. Now having that internet and that capability and that constant contact and reach, worldwide reach within your hands everywhere you go almost. And the difference here, and this is the third one, but I think AI is going to be much more of a watershed moment than either of those, because the difference, which this is where it ties into his article, is both of those, although they changed industries, they disrupted and ended some industries, but they created millions of jobs. They created trillions of dollars of revenue because of the speed at which people could be productive. AI is going to be more explosive than that, but maybe not in the same way, because it has a higher capability of replacing jobs. We replaced things like the news, like I had a newspaper route as a kid. You don't really see, you still see print newspapers, but that industry got shattered by the internet. AI, it's different, but now there was more opportunity for people to write and get more exposure. So it actually expanded journalism. The internet itself did. AI is changing that because in a lot of ways it can replace the journalists, many of them. Eventually, we might not be there yet. So it's going to be massive, and what it does to the labor industry is going to be extremely different, I think. And I don't know, because I can't forecast the future, but no other disruptor coming along up to this point like that, those huge technological innovations. When the Wright brothers first flew, and then that ultimately was going to be used for military purposes only, Later, it became used, hey, we can transport people here. It sped up business. It created and expanded jobs, and it created expanded capital flow as a huge disruptor. But man, this one might have a much more negative labor impact than anything we've seen. Everything else has been a net positive.
Yeah, if I'm going to sum up the article in one sentence, or if Jordy's going to sum up his article in one sentence, basically it's that capital compounds and labor weights. And so the conventional struggle between capital and labor, which when you think of that, you think of labor unions striking, you think of picket lines, et cetera. There was a balance. There has been a balance of labor organizing, and I would say back in the Industrial Revolution, there was a very valid reason for labor unions. When you have these kind of working conditions, factory life, underage labor, et cetera, like getting some codified safety measures in place was a valid cause for labor as an organized entity. And so there was always the back and forth and the struggle between labor and capital. But AI is going to permanently end that element of the struggle there. Like capital will continue to grow and labor is going to get left behind, because a lot of the jobs that are going to be replaced are not going to be generating new jobs. And he quotes two different CEOs, one of whom says that, just like the horse and buggy was replaced, but now cars create lots more prosperity, et cetera. Just like the internet put out a lot of print media, but now there's way more you can do. So he says this is no different. But then another CEO says, no, this is different, because when you can shred your budget down and you barely have to have employees, everything is done automatically. You can replace most companies could probably replace, I'm making this number up, but could probably remove half of their labor force today if they understand and implement AI. And that's just the beginning. The thing is, that's not going to cut down their productivity. In fact, it's going to skyrocket their earnings, because their productivity, none of us can be as productive at a lot of these roles as AI can be. And so if you have skyrocketing production, skyrocketing revenue, while at the same time laying off a majority of your workforce, which industry by industry, more and more of that's going to happen, there's not replacement jobs. And so the Fed is stuck in this bind of their charter role is to reduce unemployment and maintain the stability of the currency. Well, if the currency is continuing to skyrocket and there's nothing that they're going to be able to do to keep employment at the levels that it was at before, like you just can't. So there's those two competing views, and I lean more towards the one that labor is going to be fully left behind here, and we need to be ready. I'm going to read a few snippets as we go from the article. We're not going to do the whole thing, but he makes some really good points here, and I'll try to link his post in our write up here. So if you want to go and read the whole thing, but it's a really interesting point in history where capital compounds and labor weights.
Just getting off of like what he's written, like what do you think happens to some of these major industries we know? Like, the IT world historically, a lot of people think like the IT nerds, the clicky clackers that work for a lot of these corporations kind of just know how to make everything work. Their best friend is Google. When they have IT problems and things aren't happening, they Google the problem to find the solution. And then they know how to write the code to fix it. Or maybe from there, they know the back channels, the things that we don't know. But when you're talking about the speed at which AI can work, it doesn't even have to access Google and find the right link. It doesn't have to search through the forums. It doesn't have to do any of that. It just finds the problem, solves it in seconds, maybe minutes. It's like they're talking about making these humanoids. So is an auto mechanic safe? Will it be able to do plumbing? Because that's the argument people say. They'll say you always need plumbers. Well, if this humanoid can walk into a house, diagnose a problem, and fix it in moments, do you? I don't know. Like it's going to be absolutely insane. Like I kind of like want to think about the end product of like what labor position is safe.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think like airline pilots are not going to be. Of course, already as an airline pilot, you're doing very little from start to finish. You're essentially monitoring systems that's flying itself. I mean, I know there's more to that. You would be able to speak to that, but in general, the aircraft itself is very capable of doing all phases or most phases of the
aircraft,
flight.
yeah.
By itself. Now, of course, nobody wants to see no pilots up there. You always want to see someone up there. So I would imagine roles like that, perhaps the plane gets even more capable and less dependent on a pilot, but we're still going to want a pilot in the cockpit.
I think we will see single pilot cockpits in our lifetime. Of course, the
Interesting.
pilot groups are all fighting that as a labor group, like you're saying, but
Yeah.
I think it's coming. It's happening. And all of the, on the capital side of that equation is constantly looking at how to do it. So therein lies some of the positive. If you think about what some of the internet has done to humanity, in that although we are more connected, we're also a lot less connected. Like think about, in our dad's generations, like there were like men's clubs everywhere. Fraternal organizations were a big thing. People got together, community was bigger, and that is broken down because of the internet. That's one negative, I think, is that we just don't socialize in the same way as we used to. So I think that in the advent of AI, that's going to become ever more important. So
Yeah.
how can a person ennoble work? Like a machine can never do that, right? So that's the one place, like, a person's still going to want a human being in that cockpit. Coaching, community, those sorts of things might be where the creativity of human beings has to come together. And I don't know where the income comes from that. I don't have the crystal ball in front of me to say how that generates capital and generates labor, but there actually could be a positive shift there, because if AI is going to even take over that stuff, like we can't lose human connection. And I think there could be a huge growth phase going back to the historical example of how communities came together.
Yeah, and I think that everything we're saying here is speculation because we have to reframe our timeline. Like, if you understand what a logarithmic scale is, the best example of a logarithmic scale that I've seen is an XKCD comic where they show the relationship of or the relative power produced by different units, different energy sources. So, like on a bar graph, if you didn't have a logarithmic scale, if you go from wind power to solar to gasoline to nuclear, the nuclear relative to the wind power, it'd be like, if half of the comic strip graph was wind power, you would need miles and miles and miles of relative sized lines of this graph to show it. So you can't show a log scale is going to take those extreme variations and try to compress it onto one graph, sort of. So we need to change what we're thinking about when any one of us say, well, we'll always need someone in the cockpit. I mean, I agree. I think we'll always want to see someone there. But what Jordi says is what once took a century of disruption and resistance now happens in quarters. And so
Yeah.
I get an AI newsletter every day, not because I know much about it. I'm trying to just kind of keep a little bit of an idea of what's happening. And it's insane what 1 week to 1 week, how much it changes. It's like now nobody needs coders. Nobody needs to hire a coder anymore. You just need to create one coding agent for your company. And you never so what they said even 10 years ago was, oh, just learn to code. Like that was the secret to wealth
5 years
building. And so
ago, there were people during COVID learning to code to create revenue when everything was shutting down.
yeah, it's already gone. So we need to accelerate or compress the timeline of how we think these things can happen because they're accelerating at such an insane. We're in the hockey stick. We're only in the very beginning, and it's already the hockey stick straight up right now. So we need to compress that timeline. And so when we say, "Oh no, I'll always want a person doing surgery," well, in that newsletter, they showed how reading and diagnosing based on medical reports was 400% more accurate with an AI bot doing it over a doctor. And so what we think right now, of course, I want someone driving my car. Of course, I want someone flying my plane. Of course, I want someone doing the surgery on me. But we don't know that in whether or not in 5 years' time we'll feel the same way. And so we need to be flexible with this. The main takeaway for me is old paradigms are crumbling fast. Now, even 2 years ago, we've been taught, like you and I have been doing content for about 2 years now, and we've talked about college and how it's not worth it. We do not want our kids to go to college, or we don't have that same desire. Like this is the status quo that you go to college. And that was before AI. That was before AI has officially put the nail in the coffin of the university system because there's no essay writing anymore. There's really no need for what a college offers. At this point, it's a social experience, and there's very little value. And even for doctors and lawyers, it won't be valuable the way it is much longer. Like that's the last thing that they're holding on to is some fields require a college degree, but they only require a college degree because they do, not because of the knowledge that the degrees impart. And so I think that with the idea of, and this is a little clip from another Jordi Visser post, but he said after following the script for 2 decades, many recent graduates now find themselves burdened with student debt, facing competition from AI for entry-level jobs and priced out of the housing market. What they were told would guarantee success has left them anxious, disoriented, and disillusioned. The instructions didn't account for a future that was being written in real time. So we need to throw so many of these old paradigms out the window. And I think that the conventional financial strategy is going to be shattered in the coming future. I think we need to be ready for all possibilities of that. And we need to make sure our strategies are resilient against whatever may come. And that's a point we make over and over, this time specifically related to AI.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking back to what you said about the college side, did you see that kid? I think it was at UCLA. He like pulled up his computer and he flipped off the camera and he was thanking Chat GPT for doing his final exam work or his final projects to graduate. He learned nothing. He got a degree with
Yeah.
that, from a high university and totally used AI to get through school. These last 2 years or so.
I did a piece in our newsletter about that, how the cell phones have made and AI have made the college professors are just quitting. They're like, this is totally pointless because all I'm doing is just trying to screen whether or not something was done by AI, and I can't even tell anymore. And the students have no incentive. They're just going to get around. Like this is accelerating, and so again, the university system I think is toast. I think that fortunately, by the time my daughters get there, there will be no value. And I've been saying that for 5 years now, but I think even more so. Like everything is accelerating.
I agree, but I wonder what the if there ends up being a labor shortage, what's the alternative? I wonder.
We have to expect that a lot of these jobs are going to be, I would think that diagnosis tools for electricians, plumbers, et cetera, are going to get very advanced. And I think that's going to make their jobs much, much easier. But I think at the end of the day, a lot of those kind of roles, I think there's going to be a lot that's taken over, or I don't think that. I'm guessing. Again, we can't have any concrete opinions on this, but I would imagine that those trade roles are going to be safe for quite a while. But again, who knows? Because one quarter from now, we could all be saying, did you see what was unveiled? So it's really hard to speculate, but yeah, it's it's crazy.
And well, one of the things that he speaks about in that article, it's the headline to one of the sections is capital compounds labor weights. So my oldest kid's 14, your oldest is it 3 now or 2 still?
My oldest is 4.
4. I'm way off. Jeez, I feel like she just stays 2 forever since I last saw her. But yes, okay. So think about that. That's 14 years for yours, 4 for mine. One of the keys, I think, for our generation that are seeing this, and probably on the back end of the curve, because if you think about the people who best take advantage, typically historically, of major pivot points in history, it's always going to be the youngest people that adopt first. I mean, look at a boomer trying to like program their television. You're already in your 40s when that stuff started, and you just kind of fall behind with the pace of what's happening. And hopefully we can stay with it. I think that we're at least in the world enough that we're going to keep up. So it's our job, thinking about that future, to build that capital compounds. So how do we build the proper capital base that can keep compounding? It's going to be through ownership. It's really the only way. It's going to be through ownership and through having access to capital, having property, having something that is foundational to continue to compound, to survive potential labor shortages, and then thrive in the event of those things.
There's a little section I'll read here from the article along those lines. It says, from lawyers and analysts to factory workers and drivers, no segment of the workforce is fully insulated. Comparing AI to past innovations misses a critical distinction. This isn't just a tool that we wield. It's a system that learns, adapts, and increasingly operates without us. This is a shift no society has ever truly faced before. What's often missing from the conversation is the psychological weight of a world where there's nowhere to hide. In past waves of disruption, workers could shift sectors. Agriculture gave way to manufacturing. Manufacturing gave way to services. But with AI, the sheer breadth and speed of potential replacement is unlike anything we've seen before. Entire categories of jobs, mental and physical, are being reshaped or eliminated, not over decades, but quarters. Even knowledge workers in frontline roles are simultaneously under threat. It creates a pervasive anxiety about the future. And while it's possible that new job categories will emerge, there's a growing risk that the velocity of displacement far exceeds the pace of creation. In that gap, companies may enjoy rapid margin expansion and productivity gains, but they will likely come alongside mass layoffs, falling consumer confidence, and growing social unease. The danger isn't just job loss, it's the temporal mismatch between how fast AI transforms industries and how slowly society can adapt. In this regime, capital compounds instantly, labor waits, retrains, and hopes it's not too late. That gap there is where I think things could get a lot of societal unrest when unemployment is off the charts and you're still seeing. I mean, think about the narratives we see right now. Think about the absolute clown mayoral candidate of New York City who recognizes a legitimate problem, and that is that college degrees have not fulfilled the jobs aren't there. People trying to get entry level jobs out of college right now are losing to AI, and at the same time, balance sheets are going off the charts. Right, we're just shattering records in the S&P. Crypto, is hitting new all time highs, and so we are legitimately seeing a disparity between balance sheets growing. We're already seeing what he's talking about right here is that it's harder to find a job right now. The younger generation, like home prices are not. It's not like they need to work a little longer to get. Like they will not be able to buy a house like in mass. Like that is done. That's gone. Like that element of home ownership as far as the American dream goes. I mean, I think we have to expect that is not part of the equation for most people anymore because prices are so far beyond what the wages have done, and wages have not kept up, and that speaks again to that gap there. So I understand the basis for the discontent. I was sold a bad product. I was sold this idea that I need to go to college. It's not getting me anything. I have student debt, and I finally found a job that doesn't need this degree at all, and there's no way I'll ever be able to afford a home. So like I get that there is this sentiment, and then now you have the reactionaries who are open socialists that sweep in and say, here's the government to fix this. And of course, we know, talking Henry Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson, there's no government solution to any of these problems. Like the government is at best going to move up burden from one to another, but doing that is going to be inefficient. And so there's a lot of potential for this to escalate the already like over bubbling tensions from the people who are never going to be able to afford a home and are never going to get their student loans paid off, et cetera. So I'm not a doomsday kind of guy with AI, but there is potential for some disruption here, and I think it will be a pretty violent escalation when it happens and those layoffs continue.
Yeah, what's that do to the already declining birth rate?
Yeah,
it's an interesting thought. We're already seeing that population expansion issue. I'm curious how that could have an impact there. But you know what, like the one thing I stand by is although we're talking about we're mostly, it sounds like we're focusing on the negative, and nobody knows how this changes society and how this changes the world. Nobody has like he says, like we can't look at the past and see how a disruptor came along and how it created jobs. This is like totally different. So nobody really knows what's going to happen. But I think as Christians, we're commanded to not live in fear and not act in fear. So I'm not really particularly going to be worried about it. I'm just going to try to keep up with it and see what happens and how we pivot our lives. And I think the first stage to that is to be capitalized, to build a capital base. Everybody knows how we like to do that initially, and that's through whole life insurance policies. But then from there, what ownership models can you take in this world? Because that's what's going to compound. How can you utilize these? Like he says, it's not just a tool, but how can you utilize this to create capital in other ways, to take advantage of the fast movements, to take advantage of the markets, to take advantage of land changes and structural changes. There has to be a way, but the first place there is to actually have access to capital. You can't do anything when you have no money.
Yeah, this to me validates everything we've talked about as far as keeping dry powder, as far as putting protections and savings in place first. It's clear, we've made the point over the last couple episodes, the government cannot stop spending. It will not stop spending.
Never will.
If these kind of predictions of rising unemployment, he talks about how the Fed has never had to contend with something like this, where you have a booming market, you have GDP numbers that are off the charts that coexist with rising unemployment and deteriorating consumer sentiment. So they're going to have to decide, do we raise rates here to try to slow this thing down, even though the market is soaring because the job market can't keep up? Or do we keep rates low and allow the credit and the boom to continue? It's like, it almost feels like on a graph, if we chart these two variables, it's like in one case, the Fed's decision, one case, the GDP and the S&P and the market, like, well, I'll just call it the market in general, are going to shatter records and continue to climb while labor is muted and possibly even negative. And in the other option, they can tamper down that growth, but it's still going to grow. It's like you can make things less efficient. You can stifle that growth of the market. It's like that's not going to stop. Like no CEO of a company that's beholden to its shareholders can possibly justify hiring a wave of new interns when one AI agent can do all of those jobs for free or for a $20 monthly subscription. It's like we cannot pretend like this isn't going to continue to happen, and all we can do is prepare. And so the best thing we can do is be in a situation where, hey, what if none of this comes true? What if this is just like, he gives a few examples of how, we've seen a technology hype cycle where, 3D printers are going to revolutionize manufacturing, flying cars are going to be the norm. It's like we've also gotten used to kind of some of these big predictions not coming true. So, hey, I don't really see that being the case here. I think we're making a pretty compelling case based on his writing,
I think we're already
that
seeing it.
yeah, like it's going to happen, but let's say it doesn't. Well, I still want to be very well capitalized and I still want to be able to hop on the opportunities. It's like there's this like underlying foundation, and whatever's built on top of, whatever happens, we can build resiliency by using this foundational asset. I think that IBC is resilient to all of these possibilities. It's a powerful way to be ready, because who knows, you know, I can't really, I'm thinking through on the spot, like what kind of huge opportunities could come for those that are well capitalized in this development we're talking about. I don't know what those are, but surely there will be great opportunities and people will capture value and capture this ride up. I mean, hopefully all us and all of our clients and listeners are in the situation where if that opportunity presents itself, we're ready to pounce. We're ready to go. Like you're ready to have that money to buy the land before a developer can, before your neighbors, et cetera. So
Even if you just think about, the markets, like you said, that as the market, if the markets continue to rise regardless of the Fed does, because of just this capital boom that could happen, and GDP continues to ride, how can one utilize AI to figure out how to ride that wave? And if you have capital and you find a system and a process that works to understand when to buy, when to sell, when to do things like that in the market better than you can with your own historical analysis, potentially you can ride it with it, keep up with the curve. I don't know. It's the first thought that came to mind when you said that, because none of us know how this is going to change and what's going to happen. I just know that being well capitalized is going to give you some sort of leverage and some sort of ability to pivot with it.
yeah, we talk about past results don't equal future performance, right? I think more so than ever that is going to play out in reality here, because what is the Fed is staffed with economists who are backwards looking. Economic models are backwards looking. We're trying to find trends from the past. That's all we can do. We cannot know what's going to come in the future. And so you have academics, you have economists who are looking at past data and trying to use that to interpolate and project the future. But if everything's becoming exponential, there's so many ways that this thing could go. And I picture it more like, like a bouncing pinball or whatever than just a projection graph that we're used to. It's like there's so many variables that, the physics, they have the three body problem where it's like two bodies, they can predict and model out what two bodies will do in motion in relation to each other, and you add a third body in there, and no model right now
Can solve that.
can predict the it cannot solve the three body problem. And so what is that third variable in there? Is it AI that's going to make this thing an unsolvable thing where, if that third body that enters the problem and makes it unsolvable is AI and it totally disrupts your financial strategy, what are you going to do? Like, do you get another shot at this? Is your capital tied up? Is it a one shot thing where if this investment goes down, if the market does go down, then you don't have any other, like, that's it? Is this, eggs in one basket kind of situation? Do you feel like you could come up with a what if blank happens? Will your strategy still hold? And we feel pretty comfortable with our strategies, no matter what AI might do, but we need to be resilient against all of those options.
And if we're wrong, I think you were wrong everywhere. I still think it's going to put you in the best place. If what we do can't keep up, like you said, none of us know because there's no historical analysis that's going to follow or help us predict what's going to happen. Like you're still going to be in a better position because everything else you did isn't going to work either. I think if it comes down to storing capital in the way we store capital with IBC contracts within whole life insurance, if even that fails, like everything else you've done isn't working. So we've hit such a change, such a, instantaneous evolution in society that you will have done the best I think you possibly could have to have a capital base.
Yeah.
I still think it's the place to be. 100%. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm actually kind of excited to see how it changes the world.
I've been using it. I've been, like I said, that daily email that comes out, it just gives you a little, it's a 1 minute read, but it gives you a ton of links and stuff and of things that are coming out. And it's absolutely incredible how much you can outsource of things that honestly, no one really likes to do. It's like, I like writing and I enjoy putting together an article, some of the ones we have on our blog, walking through the mechanics of what is a mech, how to use a policy loan, those kind of things. But my visuals on those are pretty terrible. And even 2 years ago in writing those, I used Fiverr, the website where you basically like outsource, gigs like that. And you vet someone's work and then you pay them. And it's usually a Pakistani guy. You pay them whatever to take your visuals and make them, and I did that and they're very subpar. Like the ones that I paid for, eventually I was just like, there's a language barrier here. You don't understand what I'm trying to say. I'll just take it, whatever. I put the same article into AI and I was like, hey, can you spruce up these graphics? Because I paid for someone to do this and it's still pretty bad. And I can't do it myself. I mean, I could maybe, but I don't want to spend 10 hours working on this thing. And it spit out images like that. And I'm not going to complain about that. Like it's this, crazy thing taking my job. Like that's something it can do it better than me. It did it for free. I haven't paid for that service. And now I have better images that I can incorporate into these things. Why would I not do that?
When my family moved and we have this massive yard and, with me traveling, doing this work, doing so many things, I bought a robot mower because I would have needed a tractor. And I was like, I could either spend the money on a robot mower or I can buy a tractor, which I'll probably end up buying anyway now that I've got a little more land. But, or I could buy a tractor that I have to still get on at least once a week for a couple hours. I haven't cut my grass yet this year. And it's funny because people, like all the neighbors, like look at that thing like that's so weird. And I will guarantee you in 10 years, you're going to see those all over the country. I mean, people have them now. A lot of people have them, but it's just one little example, like this labor saving device. That's 2 hours I can use. I can do something to generate more capital than I'm spending, by purchasing that saves me the time. And it's going to happen in every facet of life. Like, do you ever see a robot mower 10 years ago?
No.
And it's sort of AI, it's GPS directed and all that, but it's coming and it's going to come into every phase of life. And that's a benefit. That's a net benefit to me. That saves me multiple hours a week. And I don't do anything. I get on my phone and I hit go. That's cool. Yep. So like you're saying, you can save you save that time creating things. I've been playing around with AI a lot for, we can use it on our back end in our business for a lot of things. Like it's going to revolutionize and save a lot of labor. And it's also going to destroy a lot of labor in the same regard. Yeah. So use it to your benefit and figure out how you can be more productive and more creative. Something that maybe a lot of people are lacking now because of just the time spent on necessary labor in your life. If that's freed up, where can you use that creativity to expand?
Don't become like a boomer with a phone right now. We're at the point where we could let it pass us by, and certainly our children would be much more proficient and used to it than we are, just inherently. But I don't think that this is, and I know a lot of people who are of the mindset that this is just technocracy taking over and they're trying to control everything and they're doing this and they're doing this, and I don't think that that's the way to, one, a way to live, and two, you're just going to be poor. Like if you're just trying to avoid all of this for the sake of,
you're going to get completely left behind. I think it's imperative that people keep up with this stuff. It's not going away.
Yeah.
Find a way to use it, find a way to incorporate it into your life, find a way to help you earn income, find a way to save time so you can spend more time with your family and do the things you want to do. We're going to have to keep up with this. You're going to get left so far in the dust. Like, somebody who was 60 years old in the 90s when the internet came out and hardly ever used it, the world still moved at a slow enough pace that they could continue to live the way they had the prior 60 years until they walked off this earth. But that's not going to be the case. It's because it's happening exponentially faster. You have to learn this and keep up with it in some way if you want to survive in this world. Because initially I kind of rejected a little bit, like ChatGPT, when that was like the very first thing that was a user accessible platform. Probably 4 years ago, the very first iteration that came out.
Yeah.
And I wasn't that interested in it. Like you could tell, because you could still tell it had the learning models of AI were still in development. So you could tell like a ChatGPT generated article, picture, et cetera, et cetera. Not anymore.
Yeah.
It's already to that place where like people actually have 5 fingers. Remember the pictures where they couldn't figure out the fingers?
Yeah.
That's
It's
already
it's
behind us. They're
yeah.
perfect now.
If you followed at all what Meta's doing, and Meta's basically disrupting everything by poaching the top AI minds to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars in salary. And so it's interesting, like they bought an ownership stake in a company that sort of does underlying services for a lot of AI companies. And so now all these AI companies that depend on this other service are basically fueling the bottom line of Meta by continuing there. It's a fascinating kind of early stages of this huge, financial revolution. Honestly, it's a technological revolution, financial revolution, but they are poaching people. And I saw a side by side of, I think it was Shohei Ohtani, baseball player worth however many hundreds of millions of dollars, and then some nerdy little Asian guy worth more money, and he's just an AI programmer. But they are poaching some of the top minds. It's really fascinating. And if the biggest companies, like, okay, let's put it this way: if you're a conventional investor, if you're relying on your IRA, you're basically riding 7 stock companies. We talked about this last episode. The Mag 7 is essentially the entire S&P 500. Those companies are all in this enormous high stakes, basically bidding war to acquire the top AI talent. They see where the future is going. They are all in on this. And so if the biggest money in the world is throwing the playbook at trying to acquire anyone they can who's the top AI minds, they're going to be using it, and productivity is and value creation is going to follow in those footsteps. They're not investing hundreds of millions of dollars in this little Asian guy for nothing, right? And so we individuals, you might be skeptical of this, but if you're not using it, what do you do for your business? If you're not using it and someone else is, they're going to have an enormous, almost immeasurable edge over you. And so we still, and let me bring it back to IBC. Let me bring it back to how we think through things. We talk a lot about what if the dollar collapses? What if? At the end of the day, I believe in our lifetimes, we will always need dollars to acquire the hard assets we want, even if we're trying to separate from the system. If you want that homestead, if you want to install the well on your leg, whatever you want to do, no matter how much you want to escape from the system, you still need dollars. You're still going to buy that bug out property, whatever it is, you're going to pay for that in dollars. So if that's the case, and I believe it will be the case for the indefinite future, then we need to optimize. And how do we optimize? Well, if the biggest money, if the most successful people are going all in on AI, and you're saying I'm going to try to do this without it, I don't think that's an optimal decision to make. And of course, everyone can make their own decision, but I think we can adapt, and we can learn, and we can stay, not ahead of it, but we can. I'm kind of like, I feel like we're sort of like, on water skis way behind the boat, just being dragged along. But like, at least we're not just floating in the water. Like, you have to be somewhat abreast of what's happening. And I think that by implementing it and understanding it's going to be a game changer, and it's going to really differentiate people over the next 20 years. I mean, think 10 years ago, housing prices were half of what they are right now. Like in a decade ago, 50%.
Yeah.
Our idea, all of these previous ideas about capital, the market does this, home prices go up like this, like these can all be thrown off, and that variable that throws everything you assumed off, we don't know what it's going to be, but I feel like a lot of them are going to stem from AI. So be versatile, be ready, and keep your powder dry. That's what I got.
Yeah. And when you were talking about Meta, I was thinking, just to go back for a second, I was thinking about Tesla. Like, even though all these morons out there hating Tesla because of his short-term relationship there with Trump carving Nazi symbols into the cars that people own, like
Retards.
they are the cutting edge right now of like autonomous systems and robotics, and
They're not a car company.
that sector of AI development. There's nobody in the world ahead of Tesla. There's obviously there's going to be different sectors, but in that place, Tesla's going to change the world again. And
Yeah.
it's not about cars like you're saying. It's not about building the best car. It's about building the best AI tool, which
Yeah.
is they're utilizing in a car. But I mean, he's into everything. So don't sleep on Tesla. It's the things they're doing are going to change the entire world as well. Meta's using it on the digital world. Tesla's using it in the physical world. it's absolutely insane what we're probably going to see. And we should revisit this in 2030 just to see what's happened in 5 years. When you think back to 2020, when like, chat GPT was in its infancy, and that was the first thing about AI anybody had heard of, to where it is now. I'd love to see where we could probably revisit in 1 year and have a wholly different discussion.
Yeah, July 3rd next year. I think, yeah, at this pace, it's going to be, we can't even imagine what a year is going to hold. If anyone's interested, that little newsletter I subscribe to, where you just get a daily little like overview of what's happening. I think it's called a Superhuman. If you just look up like Superhuman AI newsletter, I don't remember where I found it, but you can sign up for that. It's helpful, and there's always, I always pull 1 or 2 tools out to explore and look into. There's so much going on. We got July 4th tomorrow here on Coronado. It's like the biggest day of the year, because this is like a little Mayberry, like this is a little small town, and they do on Orange Ave, the main drag, enormous parade. It's a huge thing. The median, you can't go into the median until 5 in the morning, so people kind of line up on both sides of the street. At 5 a.m. you're allowed to go. You claim your spot, set up your grill. I mean, it is a big ordeal here, so we're definitely looking forward to that. You got anything going on for the 4th tomorrow?
Nothing major. We go over to my brother's place. They do like a big, the same company that does like the fireworks for downtown, like the pirate celebrations, Pittsburgh 4th of July. They do a show that is about 100 yards from his backyard.
Oh, cool.
So it's, I mean, like, and he lives right by where my mom did. So I remember they started that when my parents were still alive, and you don't almost have to like lay in the grass, but sometimes like little pieces of shrapnel from that stuff would fall in the yard and land on the house. So you almost have to take cover. It's wild. It's wild. It's loud. We just go over there and hang out, and it's pretty cool. I mean, it's like as close as you can be to the fireworks. It's roped off right behind his backyard.
A lot of locals leave the island for 4th of July just because it gets so busy. Parking's a nightmare. But they do some cool stuff, like the Elite Frogs, which is the SEALs parachute demo team. They do like a big display where they jump out and land on the beach, and they have SEALs that do a kind of like a beach invasion scenario coming up out of the water, and then big fireworks display on the golf course. They do a lot of American pride on this island in general, but especially on the 4th of July. It's pretty cool. So looking forward to that. But hope everyone, when this comes out, it'll be past the 4th of July. But hope everyone has a good time. Be willing to adapt, be willing to keep learning and staying ahead of these things. We're trying to do it, and we're trying to bring you information as we're learning it. But if you want to talk about setting up an infinite banking style policy, we are happy to have that conversation with you. It's worth your time to stress test it and make sure that if you're not going to do it, that you understand what it is and why. Because if you don't really go through the education with someone that's gone through the NNI practitioner course, you're going to be getting a lot of bad information. And so we're happy to have that conversation with you, or point you to someone in your local area, or reach out at info@remnantfinance.com, or just book a call on our website. And hope everyone has a good week. We'll check you out.
Awesome,
Cheers.
man. It's an amazing time to be alive. Don't listen to the doomsday stuff. We're living through some incredible times, man.